But she loved to fly, not just as a passenger, not just the clouds and views. Emily knew pitch and trim and glide ratios. She'd flown simulators for years, real planes too, with her dad, Air Force Captain Thomas Clark, deployed 3 times, decorated twice, killed by a drunk driver on I-25, just outside Colorado Springs. 2 years later, his flight manual was still in her bag. The aircraft Flight 282 to Chicago climbed steadily through thick bands of early morning cloud. Sun bleeding gold over the wing. Passengers yawned, flipped through magazines, took selfies. A toddler behind her kicked the tray table, rhythmically. Across the aisle, a woman leafed through a wedding planner. Someone coughed, someone snored, everything looked normal. But then came the flicker. Not a big one. Barely enough to notice. Cabin lights blinked once, then held. The engine noise, constant since takeoff, seemed to fade just a little. Emily sat up. Not panic, not fear. Just curiosity. Her instincts had been trained not to overreact. Another flicker. She looked to the front. The lead flight attendant touched her earpiece, frowning. Something in her posture shifted. Not panic, but alertness. A glance toward the cockpit. She pressed a button on the intercom panel. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. Her frown deepened. Passengers murmured. A man with a neck pillow sat up. A college kid removed his earbuds. Someone said, "That's weird." The flight attendant moved forward quickly, firm and composed, but her footsteps carried tension. Emily's breath caught. The flight manual, resting on her lap, felt heavier. Now, she glanced down at the scribbled handwriting in the margins. Her dad's. Scan. Don't stare. Trust your instincts. The knock came sharp and sudden. The attendant rapped her knuckles on the cockpit door. "Captain Harper?" She called, "No." Answer. Another knock, louder. "First Officer Dade?" Still nothing. She turned to her colleague, said something quietly. Too quietly for anyone to hear. The second attendant turned on her heel and sprinted down the aisle, past row 20, past 30, toward the rear. Oxygen kit. Emergency access key. Emily's. Heart rate doubled. Not fear. Focus. The man beside her leaned over. "You think they're, what, asleep in there?" Emily didn't respond. She watched the cockpit door like it was about to explode. Her breath slowed. Her muscles tensed. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. Her brain had already started building the checklist. She whispered to herself, "No." One's flying the plane. Another minute passed. Then came the key. The silver case was unlocked. Inside, an override card. Emergency masks, medical kits. The lead attendant hesitated only for a second, then slid the card into the panel beside the cockpit door. Click. The door cracked open. She stepped inside and immediately reeled back, hand covering her face. "Get oxygen up here," she shouted. Chaos rippled down the cabin. Someone stood. Another screamed. The woman with the wedding planner dropped her book. A baby started wailing. Emily stood. The attendant stumbled back into the aisle. Her voice strained with urgency. "Both pilots are unconscious. Possibly a gas leak. We need... I know how to fly," Emily said. The attendant froze. Emily's voice was clear, even, maybe too calm for a girl in a hoodie. "I've flown Cessnas, simulators. My dad was Air Force. I know how to read instruments. I can keep it level until someone helps us." Silence. For a beat too long. The attendant looked her over. Jeans, sneakers, backpack still zipped at her seat. She hesitated. Then she nodded. "Come with me." Emily moved, quick steps, focused. Not because she wasn't scared, but because she was terrified, and this was how she kept from falling apart. She ducked into the cockpit. The smell hit her. First, metallic, tinged with something chemical. Her stomach turned. Both pilots sat slumped forward, masks around their necks, mouths slack. She reached over and gently adjusted the oxygen on the captain. He flinched, but didn't wake. She looked at the panel. It was massive, alien. Nothing like the small dials of a Cessna, but not unfamiliar either. Her father had once pointed to a Boeing schematic on their living room table. "Someday," he'd said, "you might need to understand this." Even if it's not your job, that day had come. Autopilot engaged. She muttered to herself. Altitude hold, heading locked. She grabbed the co-pilot's headset, fumbled with the switch. "Mayday, mayday," she said. "This is flight 282. Pilots are unconscious. I'm a passenger. I have flight experience. Requesting immediate assistance. Static. Nothing." She checked the frequency. Remembered her father's voice. "If you ever need help." 121. 5 guard frequency. Always monitored. She turned the knob. "Mayday, mayday. This is flight 282. Pilot incapacitation, I repeat. Flight 282. This is Chicago Center. Say again." Relief hit like a wave. Her breath shook. "This is Emily Clark, passenger. I've flown Cessnas and flight sims. I'm in the cockpit. Both pilots are unconscious. I can follow instructions." There was a pause. Then the controller spoke. "Copy. That, Emily, we're with you. You're not alone. We'll help you land this plane." Emily exhaled. A long, shaky breath. "Okay," she said. "Tell me what to do." Was she really doing this? Emily adjusted the headset, fingers trembling as she scanned the cockpit displays again. Lights blinked, gauges danced. The hum of the engines remained steady. For now, the autopilot was still holding, but it wouldn't hold forever. Flight 282. The controller's voice crackled through. "Let's confirm your current heading." Emily swallowed, leaned closer to the panel. Her voice was steadier than her hands. "Heading is 085, altitude 30,000 feet, autopilot engaged. Copy that. Fuel steady?" She nodded before realizing they couldn't see her. "Fuel good. Instruments stable." "You're doing great, Emily. We're alerting all emergency services now. Fighter escorts are being deployed. We'll guide you step by step. Just stay calm. Stay calm." Her father's voice echoed faintly in her memory. "The sky doesn't panic, sweetheart. The plane doesn't panic. Only people do." She blinked quickly and looked over at the captain. He was still slumped, chest rising slightly beneath the oxygen mask. The first officer stirred once, a soft groan. Then went still again. They were alive, but gone to her. "Any sign of responsiveness?" The controller asked. Emily touched the co-pilot's shoulder gently. "No," she replied. "Nothing." A pause. "Understood, Emily. Listen carefully. You're flying a Boeing 737-800. It's more complex than what you've trained on, but the fundamentals still apply. We'll keep the autopilot engaged until final descent. Right now, your job is to stay steady and stay alert." "I can do that," she said. And she could, because not doing it wasn't an option. Behind her, she could hear the muted murmurs from the cabin. The flight attendant had returned to the aisle. A quiet voice announced, "A trained passenger is assisting with flight control. Please remain calm." The word passenger hung in the air like smoke. Emily wasn't trained, not like a real pilot. She'd never filed a flight plan, never dealt with wind shear, never managed a landing heavier than a 2-ton Cessna. But she remembered how her father used to look at her during those flights, like he knew something she didn't. "You're made for this," he had said once, his hand steady on the yoke, her small fingers beside his. Some people dream about flying. Others just do it. Now she was doing it. She looked outside, clear skies. A few cottony clouds drifted below like soft distractions. And just behind the wing, a shape small, fast. Gray pierced through the blue. "Chicago Center. I've got visual on. 2 aircraft, left and right, off my wings." "Confirmed," came the voice. "Those are Air National Guard F-16s. They'll fly with you until touchdown. It's standard escort procedure. You're not alone up there, Emily." The reassurance helped, but only a little. Her grip on the yoke remained light, just like her dad had taught. Not stiff, not forced. She remembered his mantra. Planes want to fly, let them. Emily, said the voice again. Softer now. We'll begin descent soon. But first, I want you to familiarize yourself with the throttle and flap controls. She looked down. Throttle levers, thicker than anything she'd handled in a simulator, curved up from the center console like two horns. The flap dial sat beside them, marked with white numbers and positions. I see them, she said. Good. You won't touch them yet. But when I tell you, you'll adjust slowly, small movements, nothing abrupt. Think of the plane as a conversation, not a command. I understand. She didn't, not entirely, but she could feel it. The aircraft had a rhythm, a hum beneath the mechanical noise. Her father used to say flying wasn't about dominating the machine. It was about hearing what it needed. She reached up, wiped the sweat from her forehead. The oxygen mask itched. The headset pressed tight over her ears. Her back ached from the rigid seat, but she didn't shift. Chicago Center. She said, "Can I ask something?" "Go ahead. What happens if the autopilot fails?" "Before we're ready." Another pause. "If that happens, we'll walk you through full manual control. You'll fly it in like your Cessna, just heavier. A lot heavier." She exhaled slowly. Copy. In the cabin, passengers leaned toward the windows, pointing at the escort jets, whispering. Some cried. Some prayed. A retired firefighter tried to approach the front, asking questions, but the attendants calmly blocked him. Tension hummed through the aircraft like a second pressure system. "She's not just a girl," the flight attendant said when someone asked who was flying. "She's the reason we're still in the air." In row 15, a little girl whispered to her mother. "She's like in a movie." The mother didn't respond. She just squeezed her daughter's hand tighter. Back in the cockpit, Emily's focus narrowed. She adjusted her seat, rechecked the displays, confirmed altitude, speed, heading. No changes, no errors. She leaned into the headset. "Center, I'm still steady, but I think I'm ready. You sure?" "No, but let's do it anyway." That got a soft chuckle from the voice, warm, reassuring. "Copy that, Emily. Disengage autopilot in 3, 2, 1. Click. The plane dipped, not violently, but enough for her to feel it shift weight. Her breath caught. For a half second, the aircraft felt alive, almost resistant. Then it settled. "You've got it, Emily. Yoke is yours. Adjust. Altitude to 24,000. Throttle back slightly. Maintain heading 085. Emily moved her hand. Not shaking now. Just slow. Controlled. Throttle back. Yoke steady. Altitude adjusting. The aircraft responded, heavier than anything she'd ever flown, but familiar, like it remembered her. "Chicago Center," she said, her voice clear now. Altitude descending. Holding steady. "You're doing incredible, Emily. Next step is yours. Let us know when you're ready for approach." She took a breath, looked out at the horizon. A jet she had never trained on. A sky she had never been this deep inside. A responsibility no 17-year-old should carry. But she wasn't alone, and she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. What does it feel like to carry a sky on your back? Emily didn't know the answer, but at 24,000 feet, she was starting to understand. The aircraft shifted beneath her like a living thing. Not hostile, not calm either, just massive, waiting. Every inch of steel and circuitry, every light on the panel, every breath of cabin air. All of it hung in balance, and she was at the center of it. Her fingers wrapped around the yoke, knuckles pale. Not from fear, from focus. "Chicago Center," she said, ready to begin controlled descent to 10,000 feet. Copy that, flight. 282. Begin gradual descent. Adjust flaps to position 5. Reduce throttle by 10%. Maintain heading 140. She repeated the instructions softly to herself. A whisper, like prayer. Throttle. Flaps. heading as she made the changes. The aircraft responded, its nose dipping slightly, the engine shifting tone. Outside, the clouds thinned, and the blue horizon began to give way to something below land, the distant sprawl of Chicago, like a sleeping map stitched in glass and steel. In her periphery, the escorting F-16s held their position, silent guardians, fast, watchful. "You've got this," came the controller's voice. "O'Hare runway 14L is being cleared. Foam trucks in position, fire and paramedic teams on standby. We'll keep you updated." "Copy." Emily exhaled and glanced at the pilots. Still unconscious, still breathing, still no help. Her eyes flicked back to the controls. Then, just for a moment, just a second too long, doubt crept in. What if she couldn't do this? What if she froze during landing? What if she misjudged? Flare? What if she lost the runway in the final seconds? What if... Don't think about them. The voice cut through the headset, gentle, calm, almost like it read her thoughts. "There are 147 people counting on you, Emily. But don't think about them. Think about the plane. Just land it. Like you did 100 times with your dad." Her breath shook. "I hear him," she said quietly. "Even now, we all do." She blinked back, the wetness in her eyes not. Yet, not until it's over, in the cabin, silence rippled like an invisible tide. Passengers watched the windows as the sky tilted, revealing the curve of Earth below. Someone murmured a prayer. A father clutched his daughter. A woman gripped a tiny gold cross in her hand and whispered. "Let her be enough." One man said aloud what many were thinking. "She's bringing us down." A retired Army sergeant 3 rows back simply nodded. "Then we stay quiet. We let her do it." The atmosphere changed. It wasn't panic anymore. It was awe. Because up front, behind that locked door, a teenage girl was flying them home. Altitude, 17,000 feet. Emily wiped sweat from her brow. The oxygen mask had been loosened now. Her headset was damp. Her shoulders ached from tension. But she didn't move, couldn't center, she said. Approaching 17,000, adjusting to 14. Confirmed. Begin reducing speed to 210 knots. Flaps to position 10. Her fingers moved fluidly now. Her body had found its rhythm. The fear didn't disappear. It just became something sharper, cleaner, like a scalpel, not a storm. Her mind was clear. Every motion intentional. Every second measured. She wasn't flying with fear anymore. She was flying through it. "Emily," the controller said after a beat. "We've got media outlets picking up the story now. Just letting you know in case you hear something later." She gave a half-breath laugh. "I figured. You're doing something no one's done before." "No," she said quietly. "I'm doing what he trained me to do." Her eyes moved across the console. Her father's voice echoed somewhere in the cabin of her memory. "Most people never fly because they think they need permission. The sky doesn't give permission, Emily. It just waits." She looked out the windshield. Chicago was waiting. At 14,000 feet, the turbulence kicked in light but sudden. The aircraft bounced once, enough to jolt her back into the moment. A collective gasp could be heard behind her. Muffled by the door, Emily tightened her grip. Instinct, not panic. Center, experiencing light turbulence, holding course. Roger that. Temporary wind shear should smooth out before approach. She nodded, understood. Then, the first. Officer moved, a soft groan. Barely more than a twitch. Emily turned. His eyelids fluttered, lips parting beneath the mask. He coughed weakly. "Sir?" she asked, leaning over. "Can you hear me?" He didn't answer. Just one word, mumbled, breathy. "Altitude?" Descending through 14. His hand shifted toward the yoke. Emily reached out, firm but respectful. "I've got it," she said. "You're not ready." He didn't resist. Slumped again, but his lips curled faintly, like a flicker of recognition. She turned back to the panel. Her job wasn't done. Altitude, 12,000 feet. The air thickened, the clouds broke, and there it was. The skyline. Steel and glass rising from the land like monuments of faith. The blue sweep of Lake Michigan behind it, like an ocean waiting to catch her. "Emily," the controller said. "Quieter now. You're cleared for final descent. We're going to take you to 3,000 feet. From there, it's all you. Copy. Extend." Landing gear, reduced to 190 knots, maintained descent. Emily reached forward. The gear handle clicked down. The aircraft vibrated faintly, and 3 green lights glowed. "Gear down and locked," she said. She looked straight ahead. The runway wasn't visible yet, but she knew it was there, waiting. "I see the skyline," she whispered. "Then you're almost home." Back on the ground, chaos unfolded behind. The barriers, reporters shouted. Cameras rolled. Military personnel stood by as O'Hare Tower cleared every other aircraft from the airspace. Emergency crews stood lined along 14L red trucks, foam units, ambulances, all quiet, all watching. Because the aircraft approaching wasn't being flown by a pilot. It was being flown by belief and a girl with her father's voice in her head. Altitude, 7,000 feet. Emily's body was exhausted, every muscle tight. Her legs ached from pressure. Her fingers were stiff, but her eyes were calm, sharp. She adjusted the flaps to 15. The aircraft slowed. She felt it in her chest, in her spine. It wasn't graceful, not like in a simulator, but it was obedient, heavy, steady. Her hands adjusted trim. She checked the artificial horizon, still. Level, still hers, center. She said, approaching 5,000. Speed at 180. Flaps at 15. Gear down. "Perfect, Emily, just perfect. Next call comes at 3,000. You'll begin alignment for approach." She nodded to herself. Behind her, the cabin had gone silent again, and somewhere back in row 17, her backpack still sat beneath a seat. Inside it, the manual, still marked with his notes. Still holding the past, still waiting. Emily looked up at the sky one more time. She could feel it now. She wasn't just in the air. She was part of it. Why wasn't her heart beating faster? She expected panic, cold sweat, spiraling doubt. But at 3,000 feet, Emily Clark felt strangely still, focused. The air outside grew thicker. The clouds peeled away, and for the first time, she saw it. The runway, long gray, shimmering in the light like a silver invitation. "Home. Flight 282, you are cleared for final approach." The voice in her headset said, "You'll maintain glide slope. Keep speed at 160 knots. Begin extending flaps to position 25. "Copy," Emily replied. Her voice didn't shake anymore. She adjusted the flap dial. The plane responded. Slowed, lowered its nose slightly. The F-16s remained on either wing, close enough to feel like allies, far enough not to overwhelm her field of view. Their presence was a silent promise. You're not alone. Gear down confirmed. Flaps 25. Speed. Steady, she reported. Visual on runway? Affirmative. She paused, something catching in her throat. It's beautiful. A brief silence passed on the frequency. Then came the controller's voice again, lower now, almost reverent. We've got you, Emily. All. The way inside the cabin, every soul had gone still. Some cried softly. Others clutched hands or seat belts or rosaries. One little boy sat on his knees, forehead pressed to the window, whispering, "Come on. You got this." The engines had shifted tone. Deeper now, more guttural. The kind of sound that meant they were going down. For real, this time. A few passengers flinched when the landing gear thudded down. A woman gasped when she saw the emergency. Trucks lined along the runway. Red lights spinning. Yellow vests. Cameras. No one moved. No one spoke. She was flying them. A girl. A kid. A miracle. In the cockpit, Emily's hands moved smoothly. Not perfect. Not robotic, but calm. Throttle to 60%. The controller instructed. You're on glide. Begin aligning heading 140. She adjusted. The nose swayed gently, lining up. The city rolled below her, silent and magnificent. Streets like veins, cars like cells, people, somewhere down there, staring at the sky. She didn't think about them. She thought about her father. He'd once said, "The hardest part of flying isn't the landing. It's believing you can." She believed. Her thumb brushed the yoke's leather grip. She could almost feel his hand over hers, steady, patient, proud. Flaps. To 30, she said aloud. Confirmed. Came the voice. A moment passed. Emily, this is tower control. Another voice said. Male. Older. Clipped. I've been here 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. We're all pulling for you. She swallowed hard. Thank you, sir. Once you're at 1,500 feet, prepare for flare. You know the move? Yes, she answered. I've practiced it hundreds of times, but never with this much weight. No, she admitted, but I'm not afraid of it. At 2,000 feet, Emily adjusted trim. Her posture tightened. The yoke felt heavier. Now, like it knew the stakes, like the plane itself was holding its breath. Reduced speed to 150 knots. Final corrections maintained descent rate. The plane shuddered briefly. Winds from the lake clipped the nose, and Emily instinctively nudged left rudder, not too much, just enough to balance. She could feel the aircraft pulling slightly off course. She adjusted, smooth, clean. Her pulse matched the hum of the engines. In her headset, silence, not because no one was there, but because everyone was. Listening, watching, praying, altitude. 1,500 feet. The city blurred by on either side. The plane began leveling. The runway now stretched out in perfect view. Phone crews in position, air horns ready, emergency doors prepped. Final checklist, the controller said. Gear down. Locked. Flaps. 30. Speed? 147 knots. Copy. You're on path. Begin flare at 20 feet. Throttle to idle. Emily nodded. Gripping the yoke. I have visual. You are cleared to land. Flight 282 in the control tower. A dozen officials watched through binoculars. Radios pressed to ears. Not one of them speaking. Outside, cameras flashed. A drone whirred quietly above the tarmac, live streaming the approach on social media. Hashtag Flight 282 trended in over 40 countries. Headlines flashed. Teenager flying jet alone toward Chicago airport. The girl in row 17. Pilot's daughter prepares to land plane of 147. But Emily saw none of it. Only the runway. Only the moment. She whispered to herself. Just fly. The plane. Her dad's voice came back, steady as ever. Planes want to fly, sweetheart. Just help them land. Altitude, 1,000 feet. She made the final course correction. Everything narrowed. The hum, the light, the sound of her own breathing. Time didn't slow. It focused. The F-16S pulled away now, climbing gently out of view. This was hers. Only hers. At 500 feet, the aircraft sank perfectly into its glide slope. The landing strip rose quickly. Too quickly. But Emily kept her nerves tucked deep inside. Throttle to idle. Came the voice. She eased the levers down. The engines quieted. Like an exhale. Prepare to flare. Copy. The plane sank. Lower. Lights rushed beneath her. Shadow filled the windows. Emily counted. Just like they had drilled in simulators. 50. 40. 30. 20. She pulled the yoke back. Slow, steady. The nose lifted slightly. The back wheels dipped, and then touched down. A hard jolt. Then, another. The plane bounced slightly. Not graceful, but not wrong. She kept the nose straight. Brought it down fast, the landing gear thudding with force. The aircraft skidded slightly. tires squealing, the weight fighting the forward momentum. Emily held it. Steady. Brake gently, the tower said. Reverse thrust now. She pressed the pedals, felt the roar shift. The plane slowed more. The runway rushed past like a blur of black and paint, and then silence, full stop, a beat passed. The kind of beat that lives between heartbeats, the kind where history waits. Then a voice from the back screamed, "She did it!" And the cabin erupted. Cheers, applause, cries, laughter, disbelief, arms thrown around strangers, a child jumping in her seat, a woman sobbing uncontrollably. A man dropped to his knees and whispered, "Thank you, God." The flight attendants unbuckled and ran to the cockpit. One of them opened the door, just in time to see Emily slump back in the pilot's chair, headset slipping off her ears. Her lips moved barely above a whisper. "I landed it." "Yes, you did," the woman said, eyes glossy with emotion. "You brought them home." Outside the aircraft, red lights spun. Cameras zoomed. Phone crews stood ready, but weren't needed. In the cockpit, Emily closed her eyes. She didn't cry. Not yet. Her hands still buzzed with memory. Her muscles still held tension. Her mind still lived in the moment between descent and touchdown. Paramedics arrived, checked the pilots, administered oxygen. One stirred, one sat up, confused, alive. But everyone's eyes stayed on her, on the girl who took the yoke, on the daughter who listened to a voice no one else could hear. Why was everyone staring at her? Emily stood at the top of the air stairs, wrapped in a silver thermal blanket, her shoes damp from the foam mist clinging to the tarmac. Cameras blinked, phones recorded. Police lights spun red and blue across the edges of her vision. She didn't wave, she didn't smile. Her eyes were still inside the cockpit, locked on the moment the wheels touched down, on the echo of her father's voice, on the silence that followed. Someone said her name through a bullhorn. She blinked, took one step forward, then another behind her. The Boeing 737 sat still on the far end of O'Hara's busiest runway, flanked by emergency vehicles and two fighter jets, its nose angled slightly left from the force of braking. The cabin had been evacuated, passengers escorted down the stairs. In stunned disbelief, some looked back, others didn't stop crying. But they were all safe, because of her, because of a girl who once sat in row 17, knees tucked under her hoodie, thumbing the corner of an old flight manual written in her father's hand. "Miss Clark," a calm voice said. As she reached the waiting paramedics, she turned. An Air Force captain stood before her, not much older than her sister. Flight suit? Tactical calm. A man who had likely landed in sandstorms and firefights. And he saluted her, full form, as if she were one of them. Emily blinked, disoriented. "I'm not. You brought 147 people home," he said quietly. "You're a pilot." Now, whether the Jaffa says so or not, her throat tightened. She couldn't speak. She just nodded and let him lower his hand. They guided her to a waiting medical station, checked her pulse, her oxygen levels, asked her questions about her vision, her breathing, her stress. She barely remembered answering. She remembered hands on her shoulders, voices like static, someone pressing a water bottle into her fingers, the way her legs trembled when she finally sat down. But she didn't feel like she had landed a plane. She felt hollow, not in a bad way, more like emptied. Every emotion, the fear, the adrenaline, the focus, the grief, had burned through her like rocket fuel. Now there was just stillness, not peace, just stillness. It was almost midnight when she was escorted into the airport press room. Reporters from every major network stood elbow to elbow behind a rope line, microphones raised, cameras flashing in bursts of color and noise. She flinched. The blanket still draped over her shoulders made her look smaller than she was. Or maybe she had always felt small, until today, until this. A tall man stepped to the microphone first. A jacket, authority in his posture, but his voice was full of awe. "We are launching a full investigation into the cause of pilot incapacitation," he said. "But one thing is already clear. Emily Clark saved 147 lives today." The cameras went wild. Flashes, questions, chatter. But Emily's eyes weren't on them. They were on the back of the room, where her mother had just entered, tears streaking down her face, her purse still slung from her shoulder, shoes uneven from sprinting. Through terminals, Emily didn't wait. She walked past the microphones, past the officials, past the cameras, and into her mother's arms. "I thought I lost you," her mom whispered, voice shaking. "I thought I was going to lose you too." Emily held her tighter. "I thought I was going to lose me," she whispered back. At 2:30 a.m., she finally stepped up to the microphone, hoodie still on, eyes red but clear. She didn't read from notes, didn't prepare a speech. She simply said what was in her heart. "I didn't think I could do it," she began. "I just kept hearing my dad." She swallowed. "He was a pilot. He flew with the Air Force. He used to quiz me on flight controls instead of letting me play video games. He made me love flying. He made me believe in sky." A soft murmur went through the room. "But he also told me," she continued, voice catching, "that the world might throw something crazy at me one day, and when it does, to be the calmest voice in the sky." She looked up, straight into the cameras. "I wasn't calm today. I was terrified. But I heard him. I remembered everything. And I flew because I had to." A long pause. Then a reporter called out, "What will you do next?" Emily smiled faintly, the first real smile since the landing. "Get my license," she said. For real this time. In the days that followed, the world couldn't get enough. Talk shows, news specials, viral clips of her voice crackling over the radio. "Mayday, mayday." On a passenger, a photo of her in the cockpit, wide-eyed, hoodie still pulled tight, headset on. Memes exploded, tweets flooded in. Headlines screamed, "The Sky Kid, Emily lands it. Daughter of the skies." But Emily stayed grounded. Literally, she returned to school, took her exams, walked the halls of her high school while classmates whispered and teachers tried not to stare. She turned down movie deals. She said no to endorsement offers. The only thing she said yes to was flying, real flying, tiny Cessnas, weekends, training hours, this time with instructors watching. Not just memory. On her first solo flight, she sat in the cockpit of a two-seater plane. Her instructor handed her a folded note before stepping out onto the tarmac. She unfolded it. "No one doubts you can fly, Emily. Now prove it to yourself." She laughed softly, then took off into the morning sky like it belonged to her, because now it did. What does it mean to return to normal when your whole world just changed? For a while, Emily tried. She sat back down in classrooms where nothing had changed. Not the whiteboards, not the fluorescent lights, not the quiet hum of students scrolling their phones under desks. But she had changed, and some part of her knew she couldn't go back. She'd lived a moment no textbook could explain, and now silence felt strange. The first day back, a senior in her math class asked for her autograph on a napkin. She politely declined. Another classmate asked if she'd felt like Tom Cruise. Up there, she didn't laugh. It wasn't funny because what she'd felt was weight, responsibility, pressure, the ache of something too big for words. Every time someone said, "hero," she flinched. She still flew every weekend. Her instructor, a former Navy pilot with steely nerves and soft eyes, never mentioned flight. 282. He didn't need to. He just pushed her harder, challenged her more, and Emily rose to it. Quietly, fiercely, short field landings, crosswinds, simulated engine failures. She didn't fly like a teenager anymore. She flew like someone who had already carried lives in her hands. And every time her wheels touched down, she whispered the same thing under her breath. Still flying. Dad, 3 weeks after the landing, she received an official letter from the Federal Aviation Administration. Subject: Civilian Commendation Ceremony. She unfolded the envelope slowly, her fingers tightening when she saw the gold seal. She'd been awarded the Medal of Civilian Bravery, the youngest person in U.S. history to receive it. The ceremony would be televised, a military band, honor guard, the president in attendance. She wasn't sure she wanted it. "I didn't do it for recognition," she told her mother quietly. Her mom smiled. "I know. That's why you deserve it." The ceremony was held in Washington, D.C., inside a vaulted hall lined with flags and polished marble. She stood at a podium, flanked by officials and service members, her dress uniform tailored just for the occasion. Her voice barely reached above a whisper at first. "I didn't know I would survive that day," she said, "but I knew I had to try." Then she looked out across the audience. Politicians, generals, civilians, and her voice changed. "I wasn't brave because I wasn't scared. I was brave because I had to move through fear anyway. My father taught me that. He always said, 'Courage is just fear.'" That kept going. By the time she finished, no one moved, not even the president. And when she stepped down, applause followed her like thunder. After the ceremony, they let her walk the Arlington National Cemetery grounds in silence. She stopped. By her father's grave, just the wind, the trees, the rows of marble stretching into forever. She knelt beside the stone. "I did it, Dad," she whispered. "I landed the damn thing." She let herself cry for the first time since that day. Not because of fear, not even because of grief, but because she finally understood what he had meant all those years. About the world throwing something crazy at you. About being the calmest voice in the sky. The following week, a recruiter from the United States Air Force Academy reached out. Not to offer a press tour, not to parade her for a photo op, but to ask a simple question. "Have you ever thought about making it official?" She didn't answer at first. She let the question sit, roll around in her chest like a slow-forming storm. She didn't want to fly for medals. She didn't want to fly for fame. But there was a deeper part of her, the quiet, still place inside, that wanted to fly for meaning, to serve, to protect, to walk in the boots her father had once worn. So she wrote back, "Yes, I'm ready." Months passed. She completed her private pilot's license with ease, soloed across state lines, passed her physicals, her interviews, her entrance assessments, and then, one bright spring morning, she stood at the gates of the Air Force Academy, cadet uniform, pressed, proud, a silver pin on her chest, not yet wings, but a promise. Her mother stood beside her, tears in her eyes, clutching a photo of Captain Thomas Clark. And Emily looked up at the sky, clear, blue, quiet. It didn't ask her to be special. It just asked her to show up, to try, to fly. She stepped forward through the gates. And the other cadets turned, not because of who she had been, but because of who she was becoming. One of them, she didn't post about it, didn't tell the news, didn't give interviews anymore. She didn't need to, because something deeper was happening. Now, she was trained to fly with a purpose greater than herself. And every morning at 0500, when her boots hit the ground, and the drill sergeant's voice echoed through the halls, and the sun began to climb over the base ... she whispered to herself, the same thing, "Let's fly." Why were they watching her like that? It was supposed to be just another early morning flight drill. Engines humming on the tarmac. Cadets lined in pairs beside sleek silver trainers. Instructors barking through the wind. But for Emily Clark, it was never just another. Even in uniform, with her hair tied back and her eyes fixed forward, she felt their glances. The sideways looks, the subtle whispers, the hesitation before they called her name. They weren't trying to be cruel. Not really, but she could feel it. Like she was already something before she'd proven anything. Like the girl who landed Flight 282 had already peaked. "Cadet Clark," the instructor barked. Emily stepped forward. "Sir, You'll be second seat today. Back seat sim observer. Next round, you're up front." She nodded, calm, but inside, her pulse was uneven. As she climbed into the back of the training jet, helmet in place, checklist in hand, she couldn't help but feel like she was being measured by something invisible. Not just her flight performance, but her story, her myth. She hated it. She didn't want to be a legend. She wanted to earn her wings like everyone else. With sweat, with failure, with silence, the plane lifted off with a low roar. The instructor in the front seat taking it through basic maneuvers, slow climbs, hard banks, stall recoveries. Emily monitored the readouts, logged performance data, and responded to each cue as trained. But part of her wasn't in the jet. Part of her was back on the commercial flight deck. Hands trembling, yoke too heavy. 147 people behind her praying she wouldn't break. And now, no one was praying. They were waiting for her to succeed again, or fail for the first time. Back on the ground, she removed her helmet, unzipped the collar of her flight suit, and tried not to meet the eyes of the cadets walking past her. "Hey, Clark," someone muttered as they passed. "Still flying on that one big save?" She didn't flinch, didn't snap, just kept walking. Later, in the barracks, a fellow cadet slid a folded piece of paper under her door. No name, no note, just one sentence, handwritten in block letters. "The sky forgets your last landing." She stared at it for a long time, didn't tear it up, didn't hang it either. She folded it twice and tucked it inside her locker, next to a photo of her father. Days passed, then weeks. And she trained harder than anyone, outran every morning sprint, outscored every simulator, but in silence, always in silence, because she didn't want to be the girl who had landed a plane anymore. She wanted to be the pilot who never stopped training. She wanted the respect that didn't come from survival, but from sweat and steel and stubbornness. Then came the storm. A late spring front rolled through the airfield, grounding most training flights, but a few were cleared to test emergency weather readiness. Emily's among them. "Clark," her instructor said, glancing over the chart, "your flight today is optional. Sim time won't be deducted." She met his eyes. "Is the plane ready?" "It's cleared, wind shear's rough. Visibility down to 3,000 feet. You want it?" "Yes, sir." He gave a tight nod, and she climbed in. The cockpit rattled against the wind as the engines surged to life. The runway glistened beneath sheets of gray. Emily's flight partner in the second seat was silent. Older, third-year cadet, quiet, all business. "Checklist complete," she called. "Roger," and they took off. The rain hit fast, heavy droplets, like nails against glass, but Emily's grip on the stick was firm, her breath steady. As they climbed, the clouds thickened and turbulence kicked in. Not chaotic, but enough to test reflexes, enough to test resolve. "Clark," her partner said through the headset, "you sure about this weather?" "I've flown worse," she replied. He hesitated. Then, "You mean that day?" She didn't answer. Didn't need to. Her focus was already forward at 7,000 feet. They practiced stall recovery. Emily pulled into a controlled climb, let the nose lift too high, and waited for the stall warning. It came, a sharp alarm, flashing. Indicator. She eased the stick forward, corrected pitch, and throttled up, smooth, textbook. The instructor's voice crackled through from a remote tower. "Cadet Clark, that was clean. Reset for pattern entry." "Copy," her co-pilot glanced back. "That was really clean." She didn't smile, just said, "Let's finish. Back." On the ground, her boots hit the tarmac with the soft smack of water against concrete. She climbed out, checked the log, helped fuel the next round. That's when she noticed something. Silence, no whispers, no sidelong glances, just nods, one or two, subtle but real. Respect, earned, not gifted. And in that quiet, she felt something shift. That night she lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling. The rain still drummed against the windows. She reached into her locker, pulled out the folded paper, The sky forgets your last landing. She smiled softly, because she didn't. She would never forget that day, not for the fear, not for the fame, but because it taught her this, that no matter what you've done, you still have to fly again tomorrow. What does the sky remember? It doesn't remember the headlines, or the applause, or the way the world gasped when a 17-year-old landed a Boeing 737. The sky remembers only one thing: whether you came back. 2 years had passed. Emily Clark stood at the edge of the airfield, flight suit zipped, gloves in hand, helmet under one arm. Behind her, cadets, instructors, brass. Ahead of her, a matte gray fighter jet, canopy open, cockpit waiting. It was her final solo evaluation. If she passed, she'd earn her wings. Not honorary, not symbolic, real, official, earned. She closed her eyes for a moment. The wind swept across the tarmac, tugging her hair free beneath her cap. The engines on the adjacent runway screamed as another bird lifted off into the afternoon haze. And in that roar, she heard it again, her father's voice. "Don't fight the plane. Fly with it." She looked skyward. No clouds, just open blue, waiting. The pre-flight was routine. By now, muscle memory guided her through the checklist faster than thought. Fuel, hydraulics, pressure, lights, gear, instruments, everything green, everything ready. A final salute from the crew chief. Then she climbed in, pulled the canopy down, and sealed herself inside the sky. "Cadet Clark," came the voice through. Her headset, clear and calm. "You are cleared for takeoff. Runway 28R, winds 210 at 11. "Copy," she replied. Rolling. The jet rumbled beneath her. Eager, she eased the throttle forward, felt the nose lift, the wheels scream against the concrete, and then silence. Lift, not metaphor, not memory, just gravity. Letting go, as she climbed, the world fell away beneath her. The buildings, the trees, the campus grounds where she'd once walked as a kid with too much fame and not enough peace. Now, she was just a silhouette in a cockpit. No cameras, no news. Alerts, no passengers praying, only sky, and she felt it again. That click, that rhythm. Like she was part of something greater. Not a girl trying to prove herself. Just a pilot home. Clark. Proceed to checkpoint Charlie. Turn heading 090. Begin climb to FL 230. Copy. Turning 090, climbing to 230. Her voice didn't shake, didn't rush, because there was no fear left in it. Only purpose. She wasn't flying away from anything anymore. She was flying towards something. 23,000 feet. She leveled off, toggled autopilot, and for a few breaths, just watched. The earth curved beneath her. The clouds floated like pages across an open book. The instruments glowed softly in her peripheral vision. But they didn't pull her attention. Not yet, not now, because this was the moment, the quiet before the descent. The place where every pilot asked themselves the same question: what comes next? She thought about her father, not just his death, his life. The way he had laughed during turbulence, like it was a joke only the sky could tell. The way he'd handed her that old flight manual and said, "You might never need this, but if the day comes, I want you ready." The way he'd hugged her the morning of her first solo, whispering, "You were born to fly. Just remember where you come from." She remembered, not just the tragedy, not just the trauma. She remembered the love, the legacy, the quiet lessons. That came long before that jet went silent at 30,000 feet. Clark began simulated descent to pattern altitude. Reduce speed to 220. Left turn to heading 180. Roger. Descending now. She clicked off autopilot. The yoke was firm, heavier than usual. She liked that. Liked feeling the plane respond to her hand, her thought, her breath. It wasn't a challenge. It was a conversation. As she brought the jet into alignment, the airbase shimmered in the heat below. its runway stretching out like arms ready to receive her. A final voice came through the headset, a familiar one. Her instructor. Emily, you're clear. Full. Pattern. Land when ready. She smiled. No ceremony, no crowd. Just a landing. Her favorite kind. The wheels kissed the runway with a solid thud. Not perfect, but real. And she brought the jet to a slow, steady halt, checked the brakes, taxied to the line when the canopy opened. The wind caught her hair again, and this time she let it. She climbed down the ladder, helmet under arm, boots. Silent against the concrete, and across the tarmac, a group of cadets stood waiting. They didn't cheer, they didn't clap, they just saluted, together, as one. Later that night, under the soft lights of the Academy's ceremonial hall, she received her wings silver, simple, timeless, pinned to her chest by her commanding officer. No speeches, no press, just 4 words, spoken quietly. Welcome to the sky. She stood outside afterward, uniform buttoned tight, the wings still gleaming on her chest. The stars overhead blinked gently. No engines, no noise, just quiet. Her mother joined her. They stood together for a while, neither speaking. Then Emily reached into her flight jacket and pulled out a small, creased photo, her father smiling, hands on a yoke, head turned toward the passenger beside him. A little girl with wide eyes and a grin that said, I belong here. She walked, to the base of a small memorial near the airstrip, a wall with names carved into steel. Pilots, heroes, fallen, and she slipped the photo between 2 stone seams. Not to say goodbye, but to say something quieter, something only the sky can understand. Back in her room, she wrote a single line in her journal before turning off the light. Sometimes, dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And then she slept, wings on her chest, sky in her bones, home.